this computer. Here we go. Okay, so again, it's great to see everybody. Thanks again for coming out to our presentation tonight. We're really lucky to have our relationship with Ken Rapp and the Zenie Foundation. This has been a relationship that Sutton High School has had with the Zenie Foundation for going on 6 years. Ken actually mentioned to the students today that over the past 6 years, through our partnership with the Zenie Foundation has given $250,000 to Sutton students to help them through college. So it's a great opportunity for our students, but it's actually really only a small part of what we do. We think some of the most important work we do with Ken is around the conversations that we hope this workshop and the workshop that we have with the students today starts between the students and their families at home about college and paying for college and making the decision that is right for you. So if you are around my age, and I am 48, you may not have ever had a conversation with your folks about how to pay for college. I know I certainly did not. I was the first person in my family to go to college. I remember bringing the financial aid forms home and doing them at the kitchen table. My dad asking me, "What's that?" And me asking my dad questions about like how much money he made, and him looking at me with side eye, saying, "Why do you want to know that?" And I'm like, "Well, I need it for the college stuff." And so there was just never like a fluency or a comfortability with having conversations between parents and children about finances and what's going to work for families when it comes to financing college. Certainly, Ken and I were talking before you all jumped on that the conversation over the past, we would say, 10 years about student debt and sort of like the crippling impact that student debt is having on our young people is certainly grown, and that's a good thing because I think people are making smarter and wiser choices. But it really starts with the conversation that you all have with your students at home. And also, the school plays a role in the sense that we want to have kids thinking about it as they get ready to make their thoughts about college and make those next steps. So what Ken's going to share with you tonight is sort of the philosophy of the Zenie Foundation, talk a little bit about that communication piece, but most importantly, he's going to give you all some resources and a tool to use that might make having the conversation a little bit easier. So we think that the resources that the Zenie Foundation have developed over the past couple of years have been really impactful for our students. We use them in our math classes, we use them in our financial wellness requirement, and it's been super helpful. And we think that they'll be helpful for you as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Ken now. What I will do is the chat will be open. So if Ken says something and you have, if you want to put it in the chat, periodically Ken will stop and I'll say any questions and I'll read the questions out from the chat. At the end of the presentation, I'll stop recording. And then if you wanted to ask questions to Ken, at that point, you can unmute yourself and just have more of a conversation. Ken and I were talking that, before COVID, the last time we had this meeting live, there was about 70, 75 people in the team room because it was a nice event and folks liked having the opportunity to talk in groups and have more of a conversation. But this is what we're going to do while COVID's still around, and hopefully next year we'll all be back in live and in person. So with that, the chat is open, and Ken, I'll leave it. Take it away.
Great, thank you. I assume everybody can hear me. If not, I guess go to the chat and you can hear me, Ted. If you can hear me, Ted, then I'm assuming everybody else can hear me. Great. So I want to, thank, Sutton High School, and Ted, you've been a great partner to the foundation to help us grow and evolve and make sure we're providing real value, tangible value on our mission to help students become effective adults. That's what we're really all about. And as Ted said, we came to Sutton High when my wife and I moved to Sutton like 7 or 8 years ago. We're down near Hutchinson and West Sutton Road. And we talked about this foundation, which is founded by the Zenie family, who have been my business mentors in my career. I hate to say, coming up on close to 40 years. And as a foundation, we were giving out scholarships, but very small and localized to people who knew the people at the foundation. And we said, what if we approached a high school and said, what is the topic of affordability, college affordability important? And that's what opened this relationship. I think, Ted, you tried to make sure that we weren't a cult that was trying to recruit young people. And that was funny to us. And we've just been learning together ever since. And so what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to take you guys through what I took the students through today. And there were 3 things. We're going to look at the foundation's website, and I'll point out three things up on the website that are pretty important right now. And then I share a communication exercise with the students, because what they're going through and what you're going through must be similar to what I did with my kids and I did with my parents, where I'm learning so much and I'm trying to keep up with it. And I'm saying one thing and they might be saying something different. And we're really talking about the same picture, but not seeing it the same way. And so there's a communication aspect to kind of keep that channel open. And then the last majority of our time together, I'm going to spend on a tool that we provide free of charge. And we want all our resources and tools are out there for people to use. And it's called the College Affordability Toolkit. And it's a place to take a look at college costs, but link them to graduating, becoming a professional, having a career and a job, and how a student is going to move from not just going to college, but what is their life and their budget and their income and the taxes they pay going to look like after college, and service whatever debt they have. And that's the toolkit that in our foundation, we found incredibly valuable to work with students on. And then students and their families can talk about, okay, here's one, there's no right or wrong, but here's one scenario. It's at the high end of our affordability. Let's run a couple of more models with two different schools and see, how that works out. If I'm going to want to be a nurse in Boston when I graduate from college, and here's my costs and my loans and all that. So that's really the meat of what we'll get into. So keeping with the spirit of me taking you through what we did today, can you let me know if you can see my screen? Somebody give me a thumbs up, or maybe Ted come back. Can you see my screen? Okay, great. So the foundation is called zeniefoundation.org. And we started here on the website because I then quickly point out one thing that's important is the pre-qualification application period is open right now. So that means anyone can apply. And I want to comment on the relationship here with Sutton High is the foundation has committed, because of the work we've done with Ted and the team, Lindsay and Aaron, and the great students over the last 6 years, we're committed to provide at least one scholarship that's worth up to $30,000 to a student. That's $7,500 a year over 4 years, provided that they meet all the criteria of affordability and investments from the student, the family situation, and us. However, 2 years ago, we awarded 5 scholarships to Sutton Memorial High School students who applied. And the great news about that is that none of us have anything to do with that. It's all the students, because the applications come in and then they're blinded. So all the names and any personal or information that could link any of us to any students is completely blind. And then there's a committee of coaches. And I'm going to talk a bit about coaches, which is I'm a coach and my wife's a coach, and some of our alumni's parents are coaches, and we're just giving back. We don't get paid for this. They've doubled my salary every year, and I still volunteer. And it's so rewarding to work with young adults and help them through this process as a third component of their world as they're going through college. And so what happens is the applications come in, the answers are put into a blind spreadsheet, and then a committee of coaches that do not include me or anybody related to Sutton actually looks at all the students. And we had 5 of them go through 2 years ago, which is great. We had 2 last year, at least 2, maybe 3 last year. And this is nationwide. So we're a nationwide program. So I told your students today that the pre-qual is open. The second thing I wanted to mention here is these are some of the students who are alumni or current scholars. And we pointed out on the ends here, Aiden and Dominique, and everyone said, yeah, we know those guys. And I think we got Harold and Hannah and others on here. So this is very real to our community. And that's just from myself and Karen, my wife's perspective. What a great thing to be able to give back to the community that we really love being here in this community. So That's why we do it. Second thing I want to do from here is say, so what's coaching all about? So what we are as coaches, as we simply become partners with you and your students, your kids, to go through the process of applying and then looking at the economics and financial fit, the fit for the school with students. We're not financial aid people. We're just parents like you guys, or guardians like you guys, and we're just here to be another sounding board and support system. The value is, for example, last year I had a student say they were going into their sophomore year. Halfway through, they called me or texted me. No one calls anyone these days. As younger people, they texted me and said, can I chat with you about my major? I have to choose a major. And she was really worried about having a major that she might not want to do the rest of her life. At that point, second semester of sophomore year. I'm not in the majors that she was interested. I don't have any background in it. I'm in tech. And so I was able to instantly go out to these coaches and say, anybody got some students that our student could talk to? And they had 3 conversations about the new area they were investigating. They were ultimately decided stay right where they were, and they're going to be a teacher, and I'm psyched about that. And yes, that's me with a guitar over here. Ken, at night I moonlight as a rock star in a classic rock band, which is a lot of fun. So, but I wanted to point out what our coaches do is we are simply another set of eyes, ears, and friendly, supportive people with experiences and a network to the existing foundation students, as well as the alumni who've been through the foundation and through school, and to be connectors for our recipients. Last but not least, I want to point out, you can go to this pre-qualification. I may as well click on it. So just before I go to last but not least, the pre-qual is going to ask some very open-ended questions, because we're not looking for, cookie cutter, fill out a form. So it's intended to be thoughtful answers, like, what are your core values and what are you most proud of? What's one that you're most proud of? And what challenges have you faced and how have you resolved them, et cetera. So the pre-qual is thoughtful. If you're invited to actually keep going to the full application, it's lengthy. And it's lengthy on purpose because we're not giving out a small amount of capital. We're actually investing in the future of the student to become an effective adult. With that said, last but not least, what I wanted to show you is all the resources and actually access to coaches at our foundation and tools is open to any student that's interested, or any family that wants to learn more or take advantage of these, whether they become a recipient of the scholarships or not. And we do have families that will take what we're about to dive into. Hello? We okay? That we're about to dive into, the tools that we're about to dive into, called the College Affordability Toolkit. And we spread that around it because we just think it helps families and their students talk to each other about the money and financing around college. So we're going to spend time, and anyone can get to this link. We're going to spend time on the College Affordability Toolkit as we go forward here. All right, I'm going to pause now because I'm going to move to the second part of the agenda, which is this communication gap, and just share with you what I shared with your students today, with your kids today. I say your students, it's likely your kids and and friends and family. So before I go there, any questions or comments? Okay, I'm going to keep going. So can you all see my screen? If I put it into full screen mode here for a second, I've got to change the view. What view are you guys seeing here? Sorry, Ted, you're muted.
2 years in, I still don't have Zoom down. You see the agenda slide, and then the next slide. Now you're looking at,
Okay,
Just
I'll
the
just go, I'll go this way, because the toolkit, the toolbar at the top is covering my ability to change the screen. Yeah, no problem. So we won't waste time on that. I got it. So we covered kind of the intro to the foundation. I'm going to touch on communicating when there's so many choices in front of our students, our kids, and then the right school for me and family is the CAT, College of Affordability Toolkit. So I take the students through the fact that when I was their age, this was me with a big old afro and a guitar in my hand. I was going to be a rock star. Ultimately went to Northeastern because it was a commuter school at that time, like 40 years ago, and I could drive to school and live at home and save money and start to experience work. And from there, I had no idea that I would end up building businesses, be part of companies, and be in tech, where I am today, and what I'm doing with my life now. As I said earlier, I am playing music, so I got back to music after we raised our family, and I built my career. The point here was it's okay not to know, but it's really important to at least have a direction going what's on the other side of the choice today of the college bridge. So you're going to go off to freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year, and it's the other side you want to kind of have a direction on so that you can look at your financial picture over there and see if the direction has any adjustments or changes as a result of the financial picture in terms of college you go to and your career. And that's what we're going to talk about with the College Affordability Toolkit. I put up this slide, which is one of my favorite slides. It really was one of those moments, an aha moment for me when I actually read about this in a great book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And what I asked the students is, okay, how many of you see an older woman? And they raised their hand. And I don't know if that we can do that in a Zoom setting. So I won't ask that question. But if you see an older woman, that's okay. And she's got kind of curly hair here in the front with a shawl going over the back of her head. And she's got her mouth is here and her chin down. Can you guys, I'm assuming you can see my cursor. Their chin's down here. Her nose is here. Her eyes are here. I don't tell that to the students. I just ask how many can see the older woman. And then I say, well, how many see a younger woman? Today it was 30% saw the older woman and 70% saw the younger woman. And just to help you see it, the younger woman is actually looking the other way. She's looking behind the screen. This is her cheekbone. This is a string of pearls across her neck with a big furry shawl on her shoulders, a feather in her bushy hair, and her ear where the older woman's ear is. Now, I then ask who sees both, and I let them talk with each other. I encourage them to say, do you see them both? And everybody has a little chat about, okay, that's interesting because we're all looking at the same picture, but wow, like until you help me see the other person, I didn't see it. And so you may end up in a situation where you see something or you've learned something from your surrounding influencers as a student. You come home and say that to your parents and they see it differently, or your parents bring something to you and are telling you what they're seeing and you're seeing it differently. It's okay. What's important is to try and help each other see the same picture, and that there's might be two things on the same picture. And so that's kind of a fun moment, a little part of the discussion that we have. And we talk about communication and why the communication then becomes so important. We're all uncertain and insecure about what's going to happen in our futures, but knowing that we can talk about it. So from there, we move on and say, so what we're going to do then is try and picture ourselves going from where we are thinking about picking a college to adding, okay, we got to always know what the cost, and that's obvious what the cost is going to be, but how does that relate to the career we choose? And then the economic picture when we actually graduate college, and keeping in mind that I know with my kids, Karen and I had a hard time separating, still seeing them as kids from our two boys actually believing and seeing themselves as young adults. And so that sort of bridge between the communication always being in mind. And with that sort of backdrop, we then move to really the meat of what we wanted to share with you tonight, which is the College Affordability Toolkit. And I'm going to go kind of deep into it. So before I do, let me just pause one more time and say any questions that we want to talk about before I go to a spreadsheet and walk you through how that all works.
Nothing in the chat yet, Ken.
So I'm getting chat, Ted. So maybe I should have looked at the chat from. Can everybody see the chat now that I'm posting or not?
There's only 2 messages in the chat that I answered while you were talking. I don't know if they're the same
Okay.
ones that you're seeing.
All right, so then I'm just going to close the chat and you tell me, Ted, if I need to go back to chat.
Yep.
So I'm going to move us on. And this is if you went back to our website and you clicked on College Affordability Toolkit under financials and finances, you would download a spreadsheet. In some cases, I think you can do some stuff online as we're bringing the students on with their applications. And this is part of the full application, but it is available to help our students and help families. They're using it across the country now. And think of it like the tool that might have different views to start. And as you go forward together, use this as a way to communicate some things. Once again, we're not financial experts. We are not the financial aid team. We are simply trying to put in front of students and their families our experiences from the foundation students that have gone through the program, come out the other side, are still working with us on future things for young adults and career and family. And so hopefully that in the spirit of that, we'll take this example and walk through it and happy to chat about it. So simple, put in your name, put in the date. You're going to be a freshman. And then we move to, I picked UMass as in Amherst as the school being an in-state school. And I simply went out, and I'm sure there's much smarter tools to get much more specific numbers, but I simply Googled it and found $16,800 is the tuition for in-state, put in some money for books and fees and other things. Room and board, they said, was $14,600. Computer, supplies, a few other things, and I'm at $35,900 is what it's going to cost per year to go to UMass, or a total of $143,000, $144,000 over 4 years. Easy enough. We then step down to the second spot and say, okay, well, how much contribution are you going to make as a student? Have you been working summer jobs or during school? Or have you, it's totally cool if you have or have not, but this is a place to now capture that you're going to contribute $2,500 in freshman year. And then over summers, we get into some questions and some great discussions about, how much could you make over a summer in your sophomore, junior, hopefully senior year, you're off to your career. And so these numbers change every year. And so we have our freshmen, our sophomore, our juniors, and our returning seniors fill this out and update it every year. But here I picked $10,000. You can change these numbers to any number you want as a family. Great opportunity to talk with your student, talk with your child, your kids, your team, quote unquote, to say, okay, this is not 10,000, this is 40,000 because it's 4 years at 10,000. So all in all, this says a total committed from family contribution, even other assistance is 12.5, which means the gap from what we just had for the total is 23.4. 23.4 gap really means $93,000 worth of loans. So that's cool. Let's see if the schools are going to help us at all. And the third section says, okay, what's UMass Amherst going to help, going to provide? And here I put another 10,000 from UMass. Again, I could change this to 5,000. I could, for the moment, it doesn't matter. You'll see how it all works later. I just switched it to 5,000. This says this, and maybe there's a work study while on campus. I had a job at the pool where I could do homework while I was checking people in and out of the pool, which was pretty slow business at Northeastern in the winters. Anyway, so it's 6,500 more. So now the total remaining amount is 16.9 as an example. Total amount really at 16.9 is $67,600 is the total amount of loans the student now is going to head into the next page, understanding. And as a family, okay, I've got to be prepared to invest $67,000 in either loans or some other ways of making that happen. And I want to make sure that later on, we're going to look at what's the debt, what's the monthly payment on that kind of a debt when I graduate and have a job and all that. But from this point, we say, okay, let's move on to some other sources of funding. So we're going to hit next, and it's going to bring us over to the funding page. But really important to understand, this is a 4-year commitment. Your parents are going to put 40,000 in. You're going to contribute on an annual basis. This 1,500 plus the 2,500 every summer is $4,000 a year. That's 4 times 4 is 16,000 along the way, and then have debt of 67.6. So here what we do is we end up on step 4, which is we talk a little bit about the federal loans that are available to families and students. And again, these are loans, so they have to be paid back. We touch on that these are pretty easy in terms of qualification. Not everybody qualifies, but most of the students we talk to and their families do qualify for these. So we expect students to take these out as part of their investment in their own future. And we talk a little bit about subsidized versus unsubsidized. That is directly impacted by the family, effective family contribution and the family situation. Subsidized being that you don't have to pay back the interest until it doesn't start accumulating interest until the day that you graduate and start paying it back. Unsubsidized just simply is the same amount, the 5,500, but it starts accumulating interest from day one. So it'll carry those 4 years of interest on the 5,500. On the 6,500, it'll be 3 years, et cetera, et cetera. But that's kind of a detail that is going to play the same against choices that we find our students will use this CAT form to compare different school scenarios, and you can fill that out for you and your family with your student. Long and the short of it is there's still an $11,400 gap here, even after the student loan, which we would typically say to a student, well, how are you going to close that gap? That's where, yes, a scholarship like ours could cover some of it, but you still have a gap. And can your parents, as a family, can you contribute more? Is there some other way to close that gap? I'm not going to spend time on that now. What I'm going to do is say, okay, if you recall on the prior page, the number is really 67.6. And I'm going to keep that in mind. This page says, okay, at 11.4, a student has taken out this 5,500, but there's still an $11,000 gap to go to UMass Amherst, or a $45,000 gap in the 4-year program. You can see that it's pink or red because the spreadsheet has automatically said, we haven't closed the gap yet, but I'm going to ignore that so that we can move on from funding to the career page. So I get over to the career page. And here, what I can quickly do is say, okay, I want to be a mechanical. I'm going to school. Now I start thinking about my income when I graduate. I'm going to be a mechanical engineer. I want to live in Boston with some buddies. And I need to know how much salary would a mechanical engineer make graduating from UMass in Boston. So we have a pretty handy connection point here. You click on Salary Finder, up it comes, job title, mechanical engineer, Boston, Mass, calculate, boom. It comes back and tells you, and we always recommend you go to the entry level, way to the left, to set expectations of what might be that income. I put 60K in here. Again, you can adjust this based on whatever the reality is and research you do. The point is to have the starting point. And then one of the aha moments about career is, well, what about payroll deductions and taxes? And this is one of those times when most students I talk with, like, what do you mean I have to pay taxes? Aren't I going to make 60 grand a year? And well, yes, but if you click this button, it's going to talk about federal and state taxes, and you want to load those in for, your schools and your police and fire and all the right things. But ultimately, what we're looking for is, what is that monthly take-home pay if a graduating student in mechanical engineering in Boston is making $60,000 a year. So this is the key number, $3,683. Because now what we're going to do is look at a monthly budget. And this is a lot of fun to do because we can dream a bit about budgets. So we start with, okay, you want to live in Boston. Do you want to live alone in Boston? And a lot of times the answer is, of course I do. I want a 1-bedroom apartment down on the waterfront. So then we say, okay, well, that's $4,000 a month. And we obviously are going to tilt the model, and it's going to say you can't afford to live there. So I've backed it down to say, okay, so again, you can choose to do whatever you want, but the model will support it. Here, we're probably over in Brighton or Somerville in one of the houses that has 2 or 3 bedrooms, and we, have a roommate or 2. So at $1,000. Then we talk about food. And I asked the question, so how many of you are buying, all your own groceries right now? And everybody looks at each other and says, yeah, not most of our students, fortunately, are not buying their own groceries. So we talk a little bit about going to the grocery store. And this is over the course of a month. If I'm now a young professional and I have my career in Boston, I might spend $30, $40, $50 a week. I mean, this could easily be a couple $100 a month that I'm going to spend on groceries. You'll see we get pretty detailed here. That's not eating out. That's kind of groceries, but that's tight, especially these days with groceries going up. We talk about like electricity. Do any of, and I asked the class, does anybody pay their own electricity at home? And the answer is mostly no, but you're going to have to pay some electricity. And we talk about cell phones, same question. Internet, same question. Health insurance, we sort of gloss over because I think today until a young adult is 26, they can stay on their own parents' plans. We talk about clothing and sneakers, and I love sharing that my youngest son is a Nike sneaker crazy young man, and from the beginning of his first allowances, he saved up for Nike sneakers, and he actually has a closet filled floor to ceiling with Nike sneakers, and that's what he loves, and that's what he saves money for. And he's now in his late 20s, and I just had my first grandchild. He had his first baby daughter, and I have a picture of his daughter coming home with little Nike sneakers and a Nike hat, and I think that's fabulous. But he had to budget for his sneakers. If he buys half a dozen pair, 3 to 5 pair a year, he needs $600, and that's $50 a month in his budget that he's got to plan on, or he'll start buying those sneakers, and then where's that money? And, sometimes it's shoes, sometimes it's clothing. We have a place in a line item in the budget for it. I love sort of mentioning like toilet paper and paper towels and, things that you might need around the house, just thinking out loud that you might need a few $100s a year for that. Transportation, if I'm in Boston, I may or may not need a car, but I'm going to maybe hop the Green Line or hop the T, and I need some sort of money for that. And if I do have a car and I'm going to live a little further out, then I've got to pay for gas and things like that. Credit cards at $100 a month might be $1,200 a year. There's a problem with my car, or all the things that we as adults know that stuff happens. And so this is just a place to have that conversation with your kids and your child about, like, this is what, once you graduate and you're making money, you're going to need to plan for. So in this case, you can see it. We continue on with some other things, but the bottom line is the total subtotal living expenses for this person, mechanical engineer, is $2,370. And it's in the green. Good choices being made. And we even have the ability to put away $100 a month for a rainy day. So the total here is $2,470. And if you recall, and I don't recall, there it is, the total amount of income take home pay is $3,683. So in this scenario, I'm in very good shape. I'm at $2,400 until I look at my student debt. And this is sort of the punchline, is remember the student debt back from here on college 67.6. And I go back to career and I'm in good shape. And what I need to now do is say, what's my monthly income for $67,600 a year, $68,000. And what we've included here is a little button that'll take me to a student loan calculator. Again, we're not a financial aid office. We're just trying to help families get a chance to look at ballparks to have the conversation. So here I can go into a calculator, and it says I can move this guy out here to, I think we said 68,000. And with whatever these terms happen to pop up with, I'm paying $700 a month. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to place in here $705. And so at this moment is when we've kind of tied the whole thing together, because at the end, we're still green. We're still actually in good shape. The total amount of expenses in this scenario is $3,175. Our income is $3,700, $3,800. Therefore, we actually have room to save another $500 a month in this scenario. Good scenario. Problem, we still don't know how to close that funding gap. Remember, the funding gap over here still has a $45,600 gap. But if we can close it, and even with some other loans or other ways to make that, to close that gap, the job and the career and the connection and the budget actually supports this student going to UMass, Amherst, in-state engineering, mechanical engineering, living in Boston with a couple of roommates. So I hope this was helpful. I'm actually going to stop sharing for the moment and say, this College Affordability Toolkit we've designed, and all the resources, we have career guides and other things, but this is the one right now as a young adult, a student, a senior, and as a family, parents of seniors. We hope that you'll take advantage of this and use it and be able to have some conversations. And I always like to tell a story about, there's so many great stories, but one of my first experience as a coach many years ago, I actually thought I failed the foundation, but in fact, it was a great moment. the first student that I had applied to the foundation, and she was going to go to Brown. And that was what, she really had dreamt of, and her family, her friends, everybody thought that's like you got into the elite school, and that was going to be great for her. And we filled out a CAT form, and we got to the end, and her debt was somewhere near $140,000 coming out of school, $150,000. And we looked at it and said, that's a great choice, but that's a lot of debt to service. Let's look at the career. And her career she was going for was to be a journalist. And her first job was going to be to write for a newspaper. And she wanted to do that in the Worcester area. And when we went online and saw that the career salary of a journalist in Worcester, fresh out of school, was somewhere around $35,000 a year, servicing $150,000 debt, and then her family contribution and her family's participation in this process was, wow, we're oh my goodness. So I encouraged her to work with her family, take this CAT form, and see if she could come up with another two scenarios. So I like 3. I just like to have at least 3. And I thought I made the biggest mistake of my coaching career as my first student, because she went away and her family went, and I was sending an email once a week. How's it going? No response. 3 weeks go by. I'm feeling terrible. I told Frank Zenie and the foundation, I must have really screwed this up. And then she came back and she said, at the moment that you're making this decision, you have more college capital coming at you. So you can actually, we have students using this CAT form to negotiate for more college contribution to the students' college. And what she said to me was, we went through it all and ended up looking at Clark, which is in Worcester. And because of her academic record, she got a complete full boat. And she said to me, I don't need any scholarship money. And I said, great, like, that's fantastic. And I went back to the foundation and to Frank and Dorothy Zenie and Catherine and said, I failed. Like, we don't have there's no need with our student. And they said, this is sort of our culture at the foundation. No, this is exactly the opposite. This is the kind of great job to think through some scenarios. And we were able to help her family and her go through that program. She actually became a scholar. We helped support her with some book scholarships, which we've done with some Sutton students. Because they're such great students, we want to keep them part of our alumni, and they're contributing to what we're going to do in our future. They're our customers. Our students are our customers. So I tell you that story because there's no wrong answer. There may be some bad choices for you, and that's up to you, but there's no wrong answer. This toolkit is trying to help you have a facility to have a communication between you, your students, the schools, your colleges. We're happy to get involved as much or as little as you want. It is part of our application process. We double click on it and insist on at least 3 scenarios. And so let me just wrap it up by saying, I really appreciate, on a Wednesday night after working all day and driving home in the dark, these days, like I did, having the energy to join us tonight is super awesome. Thank you for doing that. We're a Sutton family community. We're super happy to be helping the community with this effort. What I covered today was the foundation and what, some of the resources up there. I encourage you to use that. Talked a little bit about that. My favorite communication picture of the older woman and the younger woman all in the same place, and learning to see 2 things that we may not see when we start a conversation. And then the College Affordability Toolkit, which is at your disposal, as is the rest of our resources. So thank you so much for joining tonight, and I'll hand it back to Ted for any questions or comments or feedback.
Okay, thank you, Ken. So what I'm gonna do now at this point, again, I also want to thank you all for coming out. I think I know that the relationship that we've had with the foundation has definitely helped us at school have more impactful conversations with our kids, and hopefully your participation here tonight, it makes the conversation a little bit easier. The good news is that I think that the kids today are just much more primed to have the conversation. I was actually having a conversation with one of our students, one of our seniors, a few weeks ago, and this is one of our students who's close to the top of the class, and their plan was to go to a community college because they're like, why would I pay all that money for gen eds? Like they've already baked that into their decision making. So like that's, I think 20 years ago that thinking would be even more rare. I still think that's the typical thinking from a college student, from a high school senior, but I do think kids are having more thoughtful conversations with their folks about what's making the right choice. So with that, again, thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording, and like what mentioned at the top, if anyone wants to unmute themselves and ask Ken or myself any questions, that'll be, you're more than welcome to do that. We'll stay on as long as you like. I will be emailing this video as soon as I can figure out how to get it to YouTube and all that good junk, along with the College Affordability Toolkit and the link to the Zenie Foundation website to everybody later on this evening. So thanks again for coming out, and have a great holiday season.